Wonderful. Welcome to our gentle class today. And something I should mention right off the start here is that we will be doing some leg stretches lying down today. And a really nice way of doing that is to have a belt to hold your leg in place. It's not strictly necessary, but most households have a belt of some kind kicking around. It could be if you have an official yoga belt, great. If not, it could be something like a bathrobe belt or a longer belt for around your waist, or maybe even a necktie or a piece of thick rope or something like that. So if you have something like that handy within quick reach, you can grab that. And if not, we will make it work without. All right, so today the focus is on breath, but not just sort of willy-nilly on breath. We're going to look at three important breath practices that you can do. And these are practices you can do anywhere. And I actually encourage you to do them anywhere, anytime. When you want to feel a little more centered, a little more aligned, perhaps waking up a little bit, calming down a little bit. And mostly what I'm going to teach you today, the breath techniques, are sort of balancing, energetic balancing. So they're not going to get you all energized before bed, and they're not necessarily going to put you to sleep, but that's sort of balancing energy and simple. So the way that it works, or the way they are, I'll tell you what they are before I tell you how they work. So the first one is yawning. I'll talk about that in a second. The second one is breath awareness, so paying attention to your breath. And the third one is measuring your breath and making your breath equal. So that one's the most complicated. The first one you do all day, right? Or not all day, every day at some point, likely you yawn. And yawning is so good for us. When we open the jaw wide, it relaxes the jaw. It relaxes other structures through the body that are related to the jaw. And we usually stretch our body when we yawn. And yawning helps us to connect with other people as well. And you've probably noticed that occasionally when you yawn, if someone else is around, they're starting to yawn as well. And you might yawn again. And you kind of pass that yawn back and forth, or pass that yawn around. But we tend to stifle our yawns. We tend to think that, oh, someone's gonna think I'm ignoring them, or I'm bored by them, or whatever, in the middle of a conversation. And that's just social conditioning, because actually yawns are so good for us. When someone yawns when we're in the middle of a conversation, the response should be yawn back, and you can enjoy the moment together. So that's the first one, is yawning. The second one, breath awareness, it helps to bring us to the present moment. We do this often, right? I'm often asking you to come back to your breath, to pay attention to your breath. There's different ways that we can pay attention to the breath, and we'll get more into that as we go along. And then the third way I'll talk a little bit more about when we get there. All right, so I invite you to lie down on your mat, get comfortable, and I will meet you there. So you're gonna come to lie down, and as you come onto your mat, you can have your knees bent, or you can have your legs straight. So I invite you to be in whatever position is more comfortable for you. And then I'll invite you to bring your hands onto your body for a moment. And actually, before we even get going with paying attention to the breath, let's just take a moment and yawn. If you want, you can add a little stretch. You just woke up. Even if it's a fake yawn, don't worry about it. Sometimes fake yawns will turn into a real yawn. So one more time, open your mouth. Lovely. And then we'll come back to this position, hands on the body. So one hand could be on the belly, one on the rib cage, or wherever is comfortable for you. And we'll start by simply paying attention to the breath. And there's many different ways that you can do this, and I'll give you a couple of options so that you can decide what feels better for you today. So one way is to choose a part of your body where you feel the breath. So Maybe it's the rising of one or both of your hands. Maybe it's the feeling of the air coming through your nostrils or going down your throat. So you can pick one particular spot and focus on the sensations of breath moving in that particular area. So that's one way. And then the other way that I'll suggest is that you could also follow the breath. So you could start when your inhale starts at your nostrils, follow it through your sinuses, down your throat, feel it expand into your body, and then follow it back out again. And generally, if at all possible, the preferred way to breathe is through your nose rather than through your mouth. So your nose is made for breathing. Your sinuses and your nose filter and warm the air. But of course, if your nostrils are plugged, you're going to breathe however you can. So take a minute or two to simply observe the breath in one of those ways, either in one particular spot or following it from start to finish each breath. Continue to notice your breath for a few more breaths. And then you can let that go as you bring your knees up into your chest. Of course, you're always breathing. Breathing is really interesting because we can control the breath, but if we're not paying attention to the breath continues on its own. Knees to chest, drawing the knees towards you, moving the knees away. If you like to coordinate the breath and movement together, that's another way that we're often working with the breath. You could exhale as the knees come in towards your body and inhale as the knees go away from your body. And if you are able, you can stay with that conscious breath, feeling the breath, or you might instead let your attention go to the sensations in your body. So one way or another, you're remaining present as you move. Next time your knees come in toward your chest, you can let them rest there and release your hands. Let your elbows come to the floor with your arms bent about 90 degrees so that your hands rest, the palms rest on the side of your thighs. And then we'll open and close the thighs a few times, so letting the hands support your legs as you take the legs apart. And then the hands will slide along the legs as you bring the legs back together. So coming apart, back together. Whether you're bringing your breath into alignment with your movement by inhaling as you open and exhaling as you close, or if you're just breathing normally here, stay conscious of your breath. Feel your breath. Stay with it. And as your knees come back together this time, stay there. And stretch your legs up toward the ceiling. Keep a little bend in your knees. Give your legs a little shake. Right, and then knees back to chest. Bringing your hands to your knees. And now we'll circle the knees around independent of one another. So knees come in together and then away from each other as you circle around any direction. Tune into how your hip joints feel with this movement. It's lovely to do hip circles when we're standing. It's also a very different experience when we're lying down. There's less weight on the joint, so it may feel a little different. You can try reversing the circles, excuse me, and see how that changes your experience. Okay, and then again, as you're ready, we'll come back to center and release the feet to the floor. Pause here for a moment. And then we're going to take a yawn together. You can stretch with your yawn, yawn again. And coming back. All right, so for this next one, we'll work with the belt. So if you have a belt handy, you can take the center of your belt and bring it around one of your feet. Doesn't matter which one, we'll do both. And so just a little hint here, if you have the belt on the ball of your foot, it's gonna bring more stretch into the back of your leg from the calf all the way up into the thigh. If you feel that that's a lot of stretch for you and you want a little more ease, try taking the belt more to your heel, and that will release that stretch a little bit. You'll still, of course, feel a stretch by having the leg in the air, but you can moderate that stretch a little bit more here if you're not flexed in the foot. But if it feels good to you to have it on the ball of your foot and that gives you a nice stretch, go for it. So you're gonna bring the leg up. If your belt is long enough, you can slide your hands down so your elbows are on the ground, and that makes it just a little bit more easeful for your neck and shoulders. But if you need to reach up to reach a shorter belt, that's fine too. And then we're going to play around with a little bit like what we did last week of sort of taking little steps toward our stretch by moving the leg a little bit further away from the body and then moving it toward the body. You can also experiment with turning the stretch off and on or going towards and away from the stretch by slightly bending the knee until the stretch disappears and then straightening the leg so you feel the stretch again. So we're slowly approaching and then moving away from that stretch, just inviting the leg to wake up a little bit. And if you don't have a belt, you can, it's a little bit more awkward for the shoulders and arms, but you can reach and draw the leg forward and back with your hands. And then I invite you to hone in on a nice easeful stretch for the back of your legs. So not a 9 or an 8 out of 10, but somewhere under 5, like maybe a 3 or a 4. So there's definitely a stretch there. You could easily stretch more. But you want to find that nice easy stretch and really relax. Relax your hip down into the ground. Relax your leg as much as you can. Hands, neck, shoulders. And be conscious of your breath. Let the breath come and go. And simply watching the breath. There's nothing you need to do. If you feel like you'd enjoy a little bit more stretch and grounding here, you can extend the leg that's on the ground so that it's straight. And you'll press into that heel, lifting the toes toward the ceiling. If that means your stretch on the other leg becomes more intense, then you can always back off a little bit. If your body has had enough of this stretch at any point, you can back off a whole lot more or even release at any time. If you feel like you want a little bit more stretch, maybe moving it up to a 5 or 6, you can gently draw the leg a little closer. We'll take 1 or 2 more breaths here. Conscious breaths, feel your breath. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and release. And bring that foot to the floor. And then either stretch both legs straight out on the ground, or if it's more comfortable, you can have both knees bent. And now simply noticing, how does the leg feel that you were just stretching? What do you notice? What are you aware of? Are there any sensations that you can bring your attention to? And is that different from the leg that you didn't work yet? So you're simply noticing, being curious, being in the moment by following sensation, your felt sense. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So you can start with both knees bent, and that's going to be a little bit easier in the stretch to begin with, and then you can decide if you want more or not. So you can take that belt again, either around the ball of your foot or closer to the heel or the arch of your foot. And you can play around, take your time to experiment with what feels the best for you. So again, the more the belt is drawing your foot into this flexion with your toes coming back toward your face, the more that's going to stretch the back of your leg. The more your toes are pointed toward the ceiling, the less stretch you're going to feel. And then, so once you found that sweet spot for you, you can start to move a little bit out of or away from the stretch, moving the leg away from you, and then moving it towards your body. So we're looking to notice, right, if you move the leg away to minimal stretch, maybe 0 or 1 out of 10, and then notice where 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Notice where that stretch starts to intensify, and when you get to somewhere under 5, so about, less than halfway where you feel you could go, back off. Go at your own pace here, moving in. If it feels good and your body's accepting, you can go a little further and lean into that edge just a little. And then I'll invite you to find that sweet spot, minimal stretch. You want to feel some stretch, feel good, feel relaxed, and then let the hips sink down. Become conscious of your breathing again, maybe looking at one particular place in your attention or following the breath from start to finish. And again, if you feel like you want more, you can extend the leg on the ground, keeping it active, pointing the toes toward the ceiling, and really tuning in. Does that now mean I need to back off on the stretch with the other leg because it's become more intense? Or am I enjoying that intensity and I can relax with it? So a few more breaths here. Right. And again, when you're ready, slowly release by bending the knee. And releasing the belt, you can bring that foot to the floor and again, stretch both legs out, relax both legs completely and take a few breaths. What do you notice in the leg that you just worked now? What are you aware of? So kind of switching back and forth between two ways of working with mindfulness with the breath, and then mindfulness with felt sense or sensation in the body. Okay, so let's come back to the breath now. Take a big stretch and a yawn. All right, and then bringing the knees back up to point at the ceiling And then we'll bring the knees back into the chest and a little more movement here. So it could be forward and back as we started out with today. Maybe you prefer now to circle your knees around or rock side to side rather than moving forward and back. So tune in and see what would feel good to your body. Beautiful. And let's come back to the center again. So for this next one, we'll be working to bring a little stretch and strengthening to the inner thighs. The hands can rest on your body. And this will help to kind of bring some awareness to the breath as well as the movement of the spine as we do the movement with the legs. So you can take the knees apart, soles of your feet come together, and in general, for many people, not everyone, the back will arch a little bit here. You can breathe in. And as you exhale, let the knees come together, feet to the floor. Squeeze your knees in towards each other, press into the ground, you're exhaling. So opening as you inhale. As always, coordinating the breath is optional. If it works for you, great. If not, just move and breathe freely. One of the advantages of coordinating breath with movement here is it accentuates the movement of the spine. So it accentuates that little bit of a back bend. And it also helps to anchor the spine at the end of the exhale when the knees come together. So if that feels good to you, great. If not, you can always breathe and move completely independent of one another. Great. So we're going to have the option now of staying with the knees apart. That may not feel good for you, and if that is the case, then you can keep moving dynamically, or you can do a little support, right? So you might, if you have maybe a blanket or a couple of blocks or a cushion or, two things, one on either side, to let the knees come to the sides, and you can rest your thighs or your knees on that support. Now, if you don't need support, if it feels totally comfortable to be here without the support, then by all means, don't worry about it. I find for me, when I'm holding my legs in this position, I have to use a lot of tension to keep from overstretching. So I have to actually hold my legs in place. If I just let them flop, it's going to be too much. My inner thighs are not going to be so happy. So I'm choosing to support. You can do the same or not. And we'll stay here for a few more breaths. So if it feels like too much, come out at any time. And again, if you feel like continuing to move, if that felt better for you, then drawing the knees together and apart is a good option. Become conscious of your breathing if you're not already. Feel the breath. Notice how you feel as you inhale, what you feel. And then as you exhale. And when you're ready, you can slowly start to bring the knees together. Take your time. In fact, go really, really slow. Just feel that a little bit of effort in bringing the knees together, and then you can hug the knees again back into your chest. Maybe rock a little side to side, or whatever movement might feel good to you here. Wonderful. So we're going to change positions now. We're going to come to a seated position. You can roll over onto one side. Use your opposite hand to support you to come upright. And then once you are upright, if you want to sit on a chair and you have one handy, that is absolutely fine. If you want to sit on the floor and you're comfortable just sitting straight on the floor, great. If you're like me and you want to have a cushion or maybe a blanket or block underneath your sit bones, then you can arrange that as long as you've got something handy. I've sat on my shoes before when I've been doing an outdoor yoga class and needed to lift my sit bones a bit to be comfortable. So we all have kind of different shapes, different needs, and sitting is not a one size fits all. So be comfortable as long as you feel your two sit bones and that you feel relaxed and upright in your posture, that your shoulders are over your hips and head over your shoulders, more or less. Then the rest of it is whatever is comfortable. So as we gather in this seated position, let's take another yawn. You can open your mouth wide, you can stretch when you yawn, whatever feels good. And I really do encourage you to yawn whenever you think about it. Even if it's a fake yawn, it's still super effective. And often you can make yourself yawn just by thinking about it and putting your mouth in the right position. All right, so we're going to look at the third breath technique now. And this one I mentioned earlier is measuring the breath or counting the breath. So what we're trying to do is come to a nice even breath where we're inhaling and exhaling for about the same amount of time. And so getting into the range of about 6 breaths per minute seems to be an optimum number of breaths per minute to breathe. So that's in the neighborhood of sort of 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out, right? So if we inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, then we're roughly going to end up about 6 breaths in a minute. Now, if that feels like it's a strain for you, you might try 3 or 2 and work up to 4, right? So it doesn't do us any good to force our breath or to push it beyond what we're currently capable of, even if we think that's better in some way or another. Right? What's better is what works for us now, and then gradually building that capacity towards slightly longer if possible. And so that's really the extent of the instruction with the breath is to find a comfortable inhale and exhale rhythm or count. You can do it by counting 1, 2, 3, 4 and exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if you rather say a little phrase or something that just keeps the time for you, that's fine. So we're going to spend about 2 minutes sitting quietly, and that's just giving us enough time to really get into the rhythm and to feel and to find our own pace with it. If you like, you can close your eyes. You might start by noticing how long is your comfortable inhalation and how long is your comfortable exhalation. Just naturally. And then to keep this breath technique really simple, I'm going to invite you to choose the smallest number. So if you were able to inhale for 4, but only exhale for 3, then you're going to choose 3. If it was 2 and 3, then you'll choose 2. So choose the lowest number that you noticed, whether it was inhale or exhale, and then you're going to make your breath equal. So you're going to inhale for 2, 3, 4, whatever you discover, exhale for the same amount of time. It's not exactly seconds, but somewhere in that range, right? So when you're ready, we'll spend about 2 minutes. So we're about halfway through. Come back to your breath if you've wandered in your attention. Equal inhale and exhale. Right, and letting that go, coming back to normal breathing. And just checking in, make sure there's no feeling of strain anywhere in your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. So again, when we're learning something new, we tend to hold the breath. And since what we're learning is the breath itself, then sometimes we can bring tension into other parts of our body just in that concentration. Right, so sitting up tall, we'll bring the hands onto the knees. Now, you can have your feet in front of you for this one if you like, or legs crossed, sitting on a chair, doesn't matter. And we'll work with that cat-cow kind of movement. So inhale, a little arch, exhale and round, or breathe freely and just arch and round your spine at a nice, easeful pace. Great. And then we're going to make our way to stand. So however it works for you to get there is perfect. Take your time. Great. And then once you get yourself upright, coming into mountain pose, find your heels anchoring underneath your sit bones. Shoulders resting over your hips and the head over your shoulders. Great. And then we're gonna yawn. So you can stretch up. Make as much sound as you're willing to make, by the way. So like really let your yawn rip. If you're willing, if you can let go of your self-consciousness enough to just let it rip, you know, maybe you're alone or maybe you've got someone around, but just as much as you're able. Give it a shake. Good. Beautiful. So I'll be curious to see if the yawn is contagious digitally in this digital realm, or if it's more just when you're in person. So let's take the feet a little wider now. We're going to work with a pose called Goddess Pose. It's a good leg strengthening pose and a little bit stretching, opening for the inner thighs. So you'll take your feet quite wide apart, so wider than your shoulders most likely. So somewhere where it's comfortable is really the main thing. If it's a little closer, that's fine. It'll make the movement a bit easier, but we want to have some distance. Turning the toes out now. So just about 45 degrees, not all the way, comfortable distance. And then we want to think about rotating the thighs out. So we don't want to roll in and drop the weight into the inner feet, but roll out a little so that the weight goes onto the outer edges of your feet as well as the inner edges. And your kneecaps are pointing in the same direction as your feet. So that when you bend your knees go out over your ankles. They don't kind of pull in towards the center. So you can bring your hands to your inner thighs actually as you practice this. So as you slowly bend your knees, you're not pushing your thighs apart, but you're reminding your thighs not to drop in towards each other. Now for you, See how it feels. Maybe dropping down an inch is enough for your hips and then coming up, great. Maybe for you dropping down a little further is comfortable. And then it's possible to drop down so that your thighs, it may be possible, it may not be for you, but to drop down in this pose so your thighs are more or less parallel to the ground. It's quite a leg workout, so anywhere in there is great. So the starting position is legs straight, feet apart, toes slightly turned out, and we'll work with the arms as well as the legs here. So as you drop down here, raise the arms up, thighs moving back, and coming back to where we started. If you want to coordinate breath, inhale, and then exhale as you come back to the starting position. Continue. If you feel pain in your knees, don't bend so much, or bring the knees or bring the legs a little closer towards each other. Or of course, you can just do the arms if your legs say no to this movement. So option here is to stay. You can bend the arms a little to keep your shoulders from crunching up to your ears. Think about elbows going back. You can turn the palms to face each other, knees moving back, chest lifting, tailbone sinking. Beautiful. And lift. Breathe in and release. Great. Let's bring the feet in and give the legs a little shake. So that can be quite intense. It really depends how you do the pose, right? Little bit, not so much. A lot, dipping down, obviously is going to be more intense. And we're going to go back into that pose. This time we're going to bring our conscious breath with us as we hold the pose. So taking the feet wide, toes turned out, this outward rotation in the thighs, right? Heart lifting, bending the knees, lifting the arms. We'll go dynamically first, so bending down and then coming up. Go at your own pace, what feels right for you. Good. This time you can stay, and as you're staying, bring your awareness to your breath. You can bend the elbows, palms face each other, chest lifts. Feel your breath. Feel it in one place as you did earlier, or moving through your body if you were choosing that. Whatever breath awareness works. One more breath. Good. And reach up. And release your arms. Let's again bring the legs in, give them a little shake. We're going to do that pose one more time, so I hope you've paced yourself. You can always do a small version, right? Just a little bit if your legs are getting tired. But we will take the legs apart regardless and turn the toes out. Right, so bending down, we're going to stay this time. And then release one hand onto your thigh, reach the other arm up and over. Come back to center, one hand to the other thigh, reach up and over. Remember, you can do this without squatting down so far to make it a little easier, if you like. Or if you want to work harder, go ahead and squat down a little more. So please honor your body. If you feel good to stay a few breaths, you can stay. We're not trying to go as far as we can, just a little to the side, and then other side. Great, and then lifting up and releasing. Great, let's bring the feet in. We're done with that pose now, so shake it off, let go of the effort. If you've brought tension in with the effort of the pose, see if you can acknowledge that and let it go. right? And come back to mountain pose. And take a moment to feel the effects on your thighs and your hips, in your core, maybe in your shoulders and arms from doing goddess pose. It's strong, challenging pose. It looks simple, but of course it's in the staying that it becomes more and more challenging. So just noticing the effects in your legs. Right. And then really digging down with your heels, lifting with the crown of your head. We'll take the arms to the sides and reach up. We're coming into a forward bend now, so you want to bend your knees, hinge at your hips, and reach down any amount. So hands to knees, ground, or anywhere in between, coming up. If you want, as always, you can coordinate breath or not, as it suits you. But if you're coordinating breath, you're exhaling forward, inhaling as you lift. Next time you come forward, we'll stay a few breaths, honoring again your needs. So if there's any issues with blood pressure, head pressure, you want to, or even lower back issues, keeping your elbows on your thighs and keeping your head above your heart and your spine nice and long is a really beautiful option. And then whatever else might work for you if that's not the option for you. So we're going to make our way from our forward bend onto all fours. So you might just bend your knees a little more, bring your hands down, and you can walk back to downward dog or bring your knees straight down to the ground from standing. And here we'll work with cat-cow or working with the moving from cow to child's pose. So whichever version is better for you. Again, if you're coordinating breath, you're inhaling as you arch your back, exhaling as you round your back, or go to child's pose, whichever you've chosen. Continuing like that, a few more breaths. You can keep going with the movement. You can add other movements like circling or the hips are wagging your tail. And at any point, if you like, you can come to child's pose. Either the version with your legs a little wider apart or the version with your legs together, whatever is comfortable for you. You can rest on your forearms. You can rest your head on your hands or on the mat or ground. And if you're in child's pose, even if you're still moving from all fours, see if you can really come back now to your breath again. Feel how the breath is in this position. Notice the breath with openness and curiosity. Letting go of judgments or how you think it maybe should be or feel. And be curious about what is. So if child's pose is a favorite, you can stay a little longer for sure. And if you've had enough and you're ready to move to the next position, we are going to come back to lie down now. So as always, take your time, especially taking your time in transitions. Making sure you get yourself exactly where you want to be when you come to lie down, that you feel comfortable. You can have your knees bent, feet on the floor. And here, taking the arms out to the sides. Feet can be together or slightly apart, and we'll work with the spinal twist, Jatara Parivriti, which actually means stomach twist, because our stomach is twisting as well as our spine. And take the knees to one side, come back to the center, knees to the other side, back to center. So going side to side, moving at your own pace. As always, you could coordinate with your breath if you like. Exhaling to the side, inhaling to center. But whether you're coordinating the movement and breath together or just breathing normally, see if you can stay conscious of your breath while you move. And eventually, when you feel complete with the twist, you'll make your way back to a centered position. And then to realign the spine and the hips and to bring everything back into equilibrium after twisting, we'll bring the knees into the chest. And you can go to the forward and back movement that we started with if you like, or if you prefer, you can extend the legs up toward the ceiling while you take the arms either to the sides or overhead. Maybe flex the feet to give a little extra stretch to the back of the legs as we looked at earlier. And then relax your feet as you bring your knees into your chest. So either of those two movements, either back and forth or straightening, flexing, and then relaxing and bending your knees. And next time you find your knees hugging into your chest, you can stay there or gently rock a little bit side to side. And then releasing the feet to the floor. Taking a nice big yawn. If you want, you could add a little stretch. And then getting yourselves settled for Shavasana. So as always, I encourage you to get whatever you need to be comfortable. If you prefer to sit, you are certainly welcome. So as you start to get settled and to find your way into that comfortable position where you can be still for a few minutes, again, come back to your breath. There's nothing you need to do with your breath, but notice it. Be with it. It's like the skill of listening. Right? We often want to interfere or interrupt or put our kind of opinion on things, but can we just let the breath be and listen? Feel the breath as it is without your involvement, without your interfering. Get so curious about the breath. Where does it go? How do you feel it? And then starting to soften. Soften in your throat. Soften in your sinuses. Soften in your nostrils. Your face, your jaw. Relax the shoulders and arms. Start to bring some awareness around your rib cage, the movement of your breath. And soften. Soften around the rib cage. Soften the lower belly, the back, the lower back area. And as you exhale, let your pelvis sink down even more. Relax the muscles of your buttocks. Relax the muscles of your hips. And dropping down, soften your thighs, inner thighs, outer thighs, front and back. Soften your knees, your kneecaps, the back of your knees. Relax your calves, your ankles, your feet. And then if this visualization works for you and makes sense, you might engage with it. Otherwise, just stay with the breath as it is. If it feels right for you, you might imagine as you breathe that you're filling your entire body with breath, as if you could breathe in through your nose and down to your fingers and toes. And as you exhale, it's like you're exhaling from your fingers and toes all the way out through your nose. Breathing into your head, all the way to the crown of your head, tips of your fingers, ends of your toes. I'll share a short chant with you. Tataha kshiyate prakashavaranam. Tataha kshiyate prakashavaranam. Tataha kshiyate prakashavaranam. Tataha kshiyate prakashavaranam. But if you're feeling ready to start to re-emerge out of Shavasana, you might use your breath to help energize you a little bit, taking your breath a little deeper, a little fuller. Consciously breathing deeper, not till you feel strained, but till you feel full, exhaling fully, taking a few energizing breaths like that. This is what I do when I'm driving and I get tired. I just take these nice, long, full, connected breaths, inhale and out. Feel energy. And then you can start to move your body, wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe if you're ready to come upright, rolling first to your side and then coming to sit. And then if you've come upright, and if not, that's fine. You can just continue to rest. That's always a beautiful option. But if you've come upright, and actually you can do this even if you're lying down and you feel like moving, you can bring your hands one over the other into the space around your heart and lungs. So this is the upper chest area where your heart and lungs reside. And the meaning of the chant that I shared with you today is it's telling us that when we do these breathing practices, and especially when we do them regularly as a daily practice, the wisdom is that we become more clear. And the words, the translation is that the breath work, it uncovers the veils that hide our inner light. And that inner light is sort of how we project out and see the world with clarity, right? Our inner light helps us to see clearly. It helps us to make decisions clearly. And when our inner light is hidden, we don't see ourselves with as much clarity or the path in front of us. There's confusion. So it's like clearing a space by doing breath practices. So I invite you to bring your hands over your heart and see if you can connect with any idea of light inside you. It could be a flashlight, a candlelight, a moonbeam, a sunbeam. And if you have a hard time either visualizing or feeling light inside you today, maybe connect with compassion if that's possible. And then as we close our class today, we want to really open our hearts with that breath, awareness, and light. So taking the hands, you can take them out to the sides, opening, lift the heart, and feel that beaming light, whether it's a bright light or a little trickle of light, feel it beaming out from your heart, and then bring your palms back together, right in that heart beam. So palm to palm. And I invite you to come into what you're grateful for right now. Just thinking to yourself, what do I feel grateful for right this moment? And then breathe that gratitude in deeply, carrying it with you as you go through your day. And I really encourage you to try these 3 breath practices anytime, anywhere. Yawning, breath awareness, and that measured breathing where we're breathing roughly 6 breaths a minute, about 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. There's a little pause of about a second between the inhale and exhale, and that accounts for those extra seconds if you were doing the math. Namaste.